I've taken a look at all these new state laws. None of them are designed to suppress the vote. A revised version produced by one of the Democrats yesterday, which has been endorsed by Stacey Abrams, in what is of extraordinarily dubious constitutionality, would remove redistricting from state legislatures and hand it over to computers. Equally unacceptable, totally inappropriate. All Republicans, I think, will oppose that as well.
That was Mitch McConnell, also in an alternate reality, and slapping Senator Joe Manchin across the face. Republicans were very quick to come out against Manchin's offer after Stacey Abrams endorsed the plan. With Manchin's support, Democratic leader Chuck Schumer will bring the bill, the For the People Act, to the floor next Tuesday. But with McConnell's vow to block it, where do Manchin and the Democrats go? I want to bring in my friend and former Democratic colleague, former Senator Doug Jones of Alabama. He also served as U.S. Attorney in Alabama. Doug, it is really great to see you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Claire. It's great to see you. It's always good to get this team back together.
There you go. So as a Democrat from a red state, you know, you and I could wander off and complain and talk about the state of politics forever because we get it, how hard it is to be a Democrat from a red state. But how do you think Joe Manchin is feeling today? You know, after he has done everything but frankly go steady with some of the Republicans in terms of trying to push this idea of bipartisanship, for them to pour this cold bucket of water on his head like in a nanosecond. I'm curious, what do you think he's feeling today in terms of the love he might have for all of his friends in the Republican Party?
I think he's incredibly frustrated. You know Joe, and I know Joe, and you know that he's been sincere in wanting to do this from the very beginning, just like the president has been sincere in wanting to do this. But at every turn, except on infrastructure, where there appears to be some agreement, but that's because there's a lot of support about that around the country in these red states. I think Joe's probably incredibly frustrated, but I'm not sure he's very surprised. He's given Republicans a long runway to try to work with him, to try to find the common ground necessary. The one thing, Claire, that I'm not sure that Joe or any of the Democrats have talked about enough, and that is that, you know, if there is this belief in the country that there was massive fraud in November, that the way to correct that is through uniform standards, the very standards that Joe Manchin is putting on in this bill. And so I don't know if that message has really gotten through to the Republicans, but Joe's got to be frustrated. I think he is closely getting to that fork in the road where he's got to make the determination that I'm just not so sure I can ever get that on these issues. Now, what am I going to do? And I believe Joe Manchin's going to protect the country and protect voting. So
the fork in the road, I think right there in the middle of the fork of the road is the filibuster. You know, you and I both know Joe. We know how stubborn he can be, but we also know that he can get mad when folks aren't being reasonable. Do you think it's possible that he would do some kind of reform of the filibuster, or even a carve out for something that is so closely hewn to civil rights in this country as it relates to our democracy and the ability to vote?
I absolutely believe that. I believe that if Joe and every other Democrat and independents that we've got that caucus with us understand and know that they've gone as far as they can to try to get Republicans on board. And if they can't get them on board, they've got to make a determination. Joe, as well as every other Democrat in the Senate and our two independents, have got to make this the decision. And that is Congress of the United States going to be a backstop for what's going on around the country? All of these voting laws that have come so quickly, so fast, it's like the California wildfires. If Congress can't be that backstop to stop that, then I'm not sure anybody's got any business being up there. And I think Joe will come to a conclusion that if he cannot get anything done, but now let's say this: if a bill can get on the floor that can get just a few Republican votes, just a few, it doesn't matter if it's 10. But just a few, it gives some ability for Joe Manchin and others to say this did get some support. Remember, if you break the filibuster, you just don't have to get 60 votes, but it sure would be good to pass it with 53, 54, 55. But I think he is coming to that fork in the road and to the conclusion that of two things. Number one, that Republicans don't seem to be wanting to work with him. And number two, it's great to talk about bipartisan efforts for voting. Everybody agrees with that. It would be the best of all worlds to get bipartisan legislation. But that's not happening around the country. This is a partisan effort in all states across this country. There is no bipartisanship to it. And I think Joe's coming to realize that as well, which is why he has come up with this proposal and is giving the Republicans a shot to say, work with me and we can work together to pare this down and get something done for the American people.
Senator Jones, Al Sharpton, good to see you again. Let me ask you this. When you look at what Senator Manchin was proposing, and he's been doing a lot of behind-the-scenes thing, talking to civil rights leaders, I've been included in that, talking to Republicans, and when he finally came out with the actual recommendations, which are no way, one way or another, many progressives, including me, may disagree with some of the points. What do you think his motive was to lay out his recommendations? What do you think he thought would happen? And when McConnell just vetoed it before anyone, even on the progressive side, could say, no, this is not completely what we want, he just vetoed it or just lambasted it as soon as Stacey gave them room that, you know, I'm all right with this, but clearly a lot of us wouldn't have been. What do you think Manchin's motive was, and what do you think about actually what he proposed?
Well, it's a couple of things there, Reverend Sharpton. It's good to see you as well. First of all, let's back up just a second because, you know, Republicans and Mitch McConnell and Senator Blunt and others are using the Stacey Abrams endorsement. What Stacey really said is that she could be for something. If it passes the Senate of the United States, she could get behind it. So I think that that's a real important distinction. I really think Joe this is a good faith effort to try to see if there are areas of agreement that can be reached on voting rights, to set these uniform standards, to do the things that are necessary to give everybody the confidence that the votes are free, fair, and without fraud, and that people have access to the ballot box. I think this was a really good faith effort. I don't think he believed, just like every senator that ever introduces a concept like that, believes that it's going to be that way or none without some modification. What it was is a good faith effort to and an olive branch to Republicans saying, I hear you on a lot of things about H.R. 1. Let's focus on this. Talk to me a little bit, and let's see what we can find some agreements on, because I believe that we can get a bill done. I've said that too, by the way, for a long time. And unfortunately, Senator McConnell, as he is prone to do, immediately douses it with cold water. And that's got to be incredibly discouraging, but it kind of shows you where we are in this country, I think, where we just can't even, we can't get a January 6th commission done. It's going to be hard to get voting rights done without doing something to modify that filibuster.